I want to talk to you guys about the 2.7 finale. It's finally time. I've organized my thoughts in a way that I feel we can finally have a good discussion about it. And I'm not going to go over every single story element. It's a 6-hour Yap Fest, too many fucking scenarios. I'm going to encompass it all and try to summarize it into like main talking points. First and foremost, I think I speak for a majority of us that this was, without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest storytelling experience that Wuthering Waves has ever presented to us in a patch since the start of the game. It was phenomenal. The bar was raised in a number of elements, which we will be going over. I think to summarize it up, the reason this patch has received like almost a standing ovation, so many people loved it. One of the reasons is it was the best pacing of a patch in the history of Wuwa. Not that it was perfect. I think the first finale, Act 1, was exceptional in pacing, and the second act had a lot more of those pacing issues, which we'll go into detail. I think the biggest, 50% of the banger quality we experienced in 2.7 is attributed to inclusivity of past character relationships, character developments that we made that felt like they were relinquished the minute their banners were over, were finally introduced into the current progressing present day story. This particular element was a this changes everything element for story consumption. I think on Naruto, a lot of people love Naruto. It also has its fair share of haters. But I think one of the biggest reasons why shows like Naruto are loved by so many people, it's not just the life lessons, but it's the fact that the show gives you way more to love than just the main fucking character. In fact, many people, their favorite characters aren't even Naruto. Their favorite characters are like Itachi, Jiraiya, his dad, like so many characters, Pain. In Naruto, you learn that its story is powerful, not because of the main protagonist and the friends he makes along the way, but because it's enabled to immerse you into the story and take it much more serious because there's so many other things going on. There's so many other character developments, stakes, intensities, and progressing stories going on as apart from just the main protagonist's story. And a lot of these side characters give value to that story as a whole. People fell in love with Jiraiya not because he was just one of the strongest characters in the story, but because he was a beloved character that came off as like an uncle or even like a father figure, if you will, for Naruto. Same thing with Kakashi. And then you've got Pain, who kind of like gave everybody the perspective of a rude awakening of the, you know, the dystopian reality that can encompass the ninja world, which gave you a whole nother thing to think about. All of this, not to go on too much of a tangent about Naruto, I'm trying to explain to you though why inclusivity of character developments and focusing on other characters, not just the fucking main protag and his latest friend that he's made, how that adds to a much more compelling story and narrative. But setting that aside, we'll come back to it. The next element, I would say maybe about 20% of the story in terms of enjoyment, was Galbrina finally taking the spotlight from fucking Rover. Oh my God, the cringiest, I will always make the best decisions, I will always save the day ass story that it's been thus far was finally attributed to somebody else. And not just her, but the whole cast as a whole, right? Now we had Galbrina, who was more of a main protag than the main protag himself. She was the one delivering the cool, courageous lines and having an unbelievable resolve. And in fact, little broing the Rover a number of times. This was so nice to see. And I want to be clear. It's not like I want this to happen going forward in perpetuity. No, I just want it to happen more often. That, you know, and so like seeing this and see another character pop up and steal the show was very lovely. On the other end of this, on the perspective though, it was also quite obvious that because they're selling her, they probably gave her a little bit too much spotlight. And I think that's something that can't be helped in gacha gaming. The final element I would say is this was the biggest, I would say, spotlight that was attributed to the villains. We saw Cristofaro and his intensity of just his mere presence and his role in the story show up and add suspense, question, a little bit of anxious, keep you on your toes. We saw the Grand Architect pop up, learn more about him, lore revelation. And then there was lore pieces that have been dripped to us across the scopes of the entire story, finally starting to come back into play. Abby, right? Imperator, giving you more lore as to how the Leviathan even exists. Wasn't just faith that brought it back to life, but also fear and even people's hopes and dreams and aspirations. We learned about that girl, or I'm not gonna say we learned about her, but we at least got to see her again. The girl we met from the very beginning of the story got introduced back into this patch, finally. And these type of things, you know, they give confidence, they give anticipation, and they make you immerse yourself back into the story again, because they finally make you like come into the mentality, I guess, if you will, that the wheel is moving on this story and you don't feel like they're stalling it. Yeah, man. These were all presented in the finale. And once again, I think this is why everybody was like, holy shit. The last bit of pieces that people might overvalue are things like more cutscenes. And don't get me wrong, these are significant and they make a big difference. In fact, they even got to cook it and did these things where it was like a mixture of in-game engine mixed in with adaptation. And that was the moments where normally it would just be in-game engine graphics, people talking in a circle, and that's it. They would take moments like that and just say, fuck it, let's just turn it into a bit of a little anime talk discussion. Like let's render it a bit. That was very enjoyable. And it made me even more invested and excited, but also allowed me to appreciate the effort they poured into the 2.7 story presentation. They already get praise for their presentation quality in comparison to their peers, but this patch, it went above and beyond. Another thing I want to point out, though, is that like you could tell that the budget for 2.7, the patch as a whole, not just story, it was heavily allocated to the story. I know some of you guys are like a bit like, disappointed in the other aspects of it. I haven't even got the chance to play those aspects, but I can tell you where it definitely went. And hey, hell, at least we had a great time playing through the story. I also think some new elements were added into the story. The first person view mode where you're going with Galbrina through like the cliffs and shit, and she's just like busting people's balls. Infinitely better than the normal bullshit that they do in those particular moments. Like at least you were able to control her, see some flashy combos as you're jumping through, look down, acknowledge the boobs and stuff. I love the fact that Kudo Games still gets creative with these type of aspects when they're incorporating in ways to present a story to you, because it leaves me with the ideology that they can still innovate and show you new ways of absorbing story, kind of like what they did with the first half when they showed off a bit of a refresher, if you will, of how the Rena Sita culture and history expanded in with that little beautifully like artistical woven style where you would just like point down and point up, point left, point right. That shit was immaculate. And so, yeah, I mean, to encompass it all, I would just say that all of these elements that I'm pointing out are elements that you just didn't see in prior patches, not with this level of effort and consistency. You want to know something funny though? I think inclusivity of past characters we made relations with showing up was actually poorly executed. I do. I think all of them pretty much showed up just to be there and support, just to help out. There was no real like overarching significant purpose to these people showing up other than like, hey, we're here, the Avengers moment. And when you think about that, it is incredibly fucking powerful, just including characters in your world building that you made prior connections with to show up at times. It's so powerful because they poorly executed it, to be honest. When you think about the Black Shores people showing up, it was the most hype moment of all time just seeing Calcharo. I almost passed out seeing Calcharo. It was also hype seeing Camellia, even freaking Klee's cousin. I can never remember her name. I think I said Camellia already. Alto. All right, Alto probably was the only guy that has a significant purpose. He was explaining to you guys like the intelligence of the Black Shores and like pretty much his expertise when it comes to like preventing calamities and how things function. He had a real purpose to him. But like Shorekeeper popped up and you saw her and it was super, super cool to see her, but you never saw her again. Never once like elaborated on it, showed off what was happening. It was just that moment. And yet, that moment blew everybody's minds away. Imagine if they put a little bit more effort going forward into giving real value to these side characters as opposed to just showing up to help out. It would make the world feel infinitely more alive as opposed to the current emptiness the world building has due to them always fixating on Rover and the latest Fred. Does that make perfect sense? It's like when once again, I go back to like Naruto or Hunter x Hunter or whatever the hell you name it, like running into the Phantom Troop and constantly running into the Phantom Troop gives way more of an alive feeling to that world building and storytelling than it does to never running into them, right? Or maybe the Phantom Troop's a bad example because you can just say the Phantom Troop is the Fraxidus and you'll say, well, they do that in Wuwa. Well, let's use somebody like Hisoka, who wasn't really Phantom Troop. He was just like another side character that you met, or Killua's brother. Like all of these characters constantly popping up here and there gives way more life to the story than it does to like them never popping up again after you meet them one time. It's just, that's the type of like purpose I'm looking for when side characters pop up. Chu Yin's a prime example of what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, he's a character they're trying to sell you in the future, but just him popping up, having a significance to his purpose, saying, I'm here specifically to bring back a fugitive that escaped, which was Scar. He had a purpose to be there. Then beautifully woven that into, I also stopped by, and Fenrico on his dying wish was like, I need to give this to the Rover. So that's why I'm here. He had a aura farming personality. He was so fucking cool. And it was just great to see him there for a particular purpose. Now, that said, you know what? Before I go onto that point, another thing I want to add in is they also completely focused on him and Scar for a particular moment and took a break from the main pro tag story. More of that, bro. We don't always have to go through the entire fucking story with just main pro tag. Take away from his ass sometimes, focus on an entirely different scenario that's occurring. It's cool. I lost my shit when I got to play with Chu Yin. Sick character, pulling on him. Don't give a damn if I don't have Galbrina. Bro is coming home at all costs. This guy, and I'm gonna criticize this later on in the video. In fact, this is an insert in because I forgot I didn't talk about this. This guy is somebody who had a cold-hearted, I will fuck you up demeanor to him. In fact, he delivered a line cold as hell. He said, I wasn't planning. They said to take you back dead or alive, Scar. I'm not taking you back dead or alive. I was planning to kill your motherfucking ass. In fact, one strike is going to end it all. And then at the end of the story, brother failed. And I was roasting the hell out of him in my playthrough. I'm sure a lot of people were crying, laughing. I said, this blind ass nigga didn't kill nobody. What was all that shit he was saying earlier, bro? This is a constant problem with Kudo game storytelling. Just a joke of a story every time. They deliver these lines, build up these freaking villains, and fail to actually meet those build up in like, it's basically like your words are empty. Your build-ups of villains in like intense moments, it's fucking empty. It's like no point in even taking it serious. Anyways, this was once again, I edited this in. Let's get back to it. Now, moving on to something that is a bit of a criticism. There were moments throughout the 2.7 finale that, although I appreciated, I actually had a very numb and like almost just no emotion whatsoever to these moments that are supposed to be quite significant or compelling. One of them is Galbrina shooting Kartathea straight through the heart. I saw that and I remember just stone face. I was like, who cares? Who cares? And you know why I said that? It's because it's just like, you guys have constantly proven that these moments don't mean a fucking thing. You never ever actually kill any characters that are playable or actually truly significant to the story. In fact, by my count, you've only killed 3 dudes. Fenrico, who was a villain, so it's kind of like bro was warranted, honestly. Redemption to killing himself is like the worst thing he could do. The Phasaelius dude, who was a piece of shit, and then Avidius, who was a completely made up character. 3 dudes that nobody really gave a fuck about. Now you can sit here and lie and say, oh, but I cared about Avidius or Fenrico. Yeah, well, I mean, you're just easy to pull at your heartstrings, buddy. You know what people care about? Kartathea. Yeah, that's who people really care about. And what I'm trying to say here is that because they never did this throughout the entirety of the story, when real like moments happen, even if they're trying to fool you, you just don't take it serious. You're just like, who cares, bro? The question that goes through my mind is, how are they going to figure this out? And how are they going to tie this story into saving her? And how are they going to tie the story into Galbrina not being a bad person? And that is the worst questions you should ask yourself when you're looking at a compelling story. The best questions you should ask yourself are actually, holy fuck, is this new character we just met bad or good? And actually wonder if they truly are bad or good. And then you come to find out, oh my God, I thought this person was on our side. What the? And you know, that is such a like, immerse yourself back into the story, brother. Nothing's guaranteed. Stop jumping ahead of the curve and thinking just because they did this, they're on your side. That's way more compelling. It's also way more compelling when you don't know if somebody will die. But when you think about it, as the story goes on, you know these things are not going to happen. And so the only real moment you're looking forward to is just trying to figure out the story and how it unfolds and the Marvel finishes, right? Which, once again, because I felt in the moment going through this story, an incredible experience, I'm impressed because I'm like, damn, I had such a good time going through this story despite all these clear flaws, clear joke of a narratives. I still had such a wonderful time. Why? Because Kudo Games really went above and beyond with presentation, hype moments, and starving the living shit out of us of characters of the past. And so I guess that's the one bad thing of never showing them, because when they finally do, you're starved for them. And so you're excited to see these characters. Okay, let's talk about something else. Galbrina and the pacing issue that was present in the second half, the 4-hour story. Listen, guys, I have no problems with how we learned about Galbrina, how they presented it, the dialogue, Chimera, who's literally goated. Oh my God, I loved every ounce of Chimera dialogue. Bro is the man. I loved how he was unapologetically a savage who has no problems killing people and doesn't give a fuck about who says what in terms of morals and stuff. Like, brother, I know what I am. I don't give a damn about what you're over there yapping about, little bro. I will devour all of y'all given the opportunity, and I'm okay with that. He had an insane amount of integrity in terms of who he was, unapologetically so, and he was just an incredible character. My thing is, this is the biggest problem with Wuthering Waves storytelling, and it still was a problem in 2.7. It's their pacing, because they have this tendency to try to shove down your throat all the lore possible in one singular patch about the latest character they're trying to sell you. And it disrupts the pacing as well as the immersion of the story as a whole, right? Guys, we still got the Fraxidus, we still got the Avengers Assemble, shit's going on outside of here. You could give us a little bit more like information with what they're doing with the Black Shores crew. You could talk to us a bit more about what Grand Architect and Cristoforo doing in the background, although sometimes it's worth keeping that kind of like obscure and vague. These are like the moments to tackle on these things to give you a break from dumping that lore all the way down our throat. I found myself like within a 2-hour window of just learning who Galbrina was and just like constantly fixated on that. And although I loved it, I enjoyed it, I also got like fatigued from it. I was like, okay, we get like a little bit of a break here. And then like 10 minutes later, we finally got the break and went back into the other world. But I think this is where they fail to capitalize on these moments. And I also believe it to be one of the weaknesses of, like I said, gacha game storytelling. They want to deliver everything to you like in that particular patch. But there's one character in the game that shows you don't have to do this, and that's Kartathea. Kartathea was a character who we learned about not just in one patch, but several patches. In fact, she still like exists today in the story. Like if every character was shown to us in the way that Kartathea was, the story would be so much better. It would be so much better than what they do right now, which is pick one character and everyone else gets the discard treatment until the finale, you know? And so that was the one big pacing issue, I would say, with the second half. It was that we spent way too much time dumping that lore on us with Galbrina when we could have been like taking breaks here and dumping into other little pockets of the story. Now, another thing, and I think this is just a gacha game story. I don't even think a lot of stories do this. Sometimes the dialogue deliverance, not every character, but obviously Grand Architect was a prime example, but he's not the only one. A lot of people talk too fucking slow, bro. Like way too slow. It's not even like, it is a level of slow that is just not even relatable to real life. Nobody talks that damn slow. I talk slow and I don't talk nowhere near that slow. On top of this, they're moving in slow motion as they're showing off the scenes, right? And talking slow. This makes a 2-hour lore dump exposition all the more like fatiguing and mind waning. And so it's like, we gotta like speed up some of these elements or take some breaks here and there, because otherwise it's gonna take away points from the overall rating of the story. The ending. I'm jumping all around here, but we gotta talk about this ending. The ending was one of the most incredible adaptation cutscenes and hype moments and power of friendship all come together. We're all in this together. Not only that, teamwork makes the dream work. Rover's not the savior of the day. We're all the savior of the day. I thought this was incredible. I have no complaints about it. It was beautifully done. It made me so fucking happy. and it was a great finishing touch. But there was a massive problem with this ending. Guys, what is the purpose of building up these villains just to have them come out at the end and clap their hands and say, haha, we were on the same side, guys. We were on the same side the whole time. In the moment, those cutscenes and hype moments were so unbelievably top tier. I just didn't care. I didn't care. I was in such a good spirit. I let it slide. Now that the recency bias went away, that was the cringiest fucking finish of my life. Cristoforo is a diabolical character. Bro has no regard for human life unless he can just empathize with them after they've already died for his bidding of his story he wants to tell. This guy was the real antagonist of the entire story, who absolutely is a villain that wouldn't have let that. Your own writing of the character makes no sense with how that shit finished. It just blew my fucking. I was just like, why would we end it off like this? I can't wrap my head around it. Grand Architect, these guys are diabolical, brother. And you're telling me at the end of the day, let me just give you how I would have preferred it. Leviathan gets defeated. Everybody's celebrating and rejoicing. And right when they let their guards down, the Fraxidus pops up and does something that's going to contribute to their overarching diabolical plans. And it's the plan behind the plan. It's the villain behind the villain that catches you slipping when you least expect it. It's like, brother, that is how I see the story playing out. It's going to give people pain, stakes, and give the rover, as well as the cast as we know it, a motivating, hateful, and resentful factor that is very humane to have, and teach them a lesson as well, and set the story up going forward to be so much more serious. But the fact that you turned the villains into the good guys blew my fucking mind away. And I think it hurt me in the long run of Wuwa storytelling. Now, you can sit here and make this goofy ass fucking argument that gacha players love to make, and that is, but the story's still going. Look, it's still time for them to do something down the line. It's still going on. That is okay. Don't be a dick, Smack. Don't be a dick. All I'm gonna say is, all you're doing is feeding into what gacha developers do, which is perpetuate a story as long as humanly possible, just for the sake of making more money, instead of delivering a good story. They don't have to end the story right there. They really don't. But I know for a fact that this is done intentionally so to perpetuate the story instead of going for a better writing experience. These guys might not ever do anything, and it might just be, let's keep negative edging them and keeping them guessing about what's going to happen, and maybe he's going to do something bad, but he actually never does anything bad. It just does it is ass, guys. Like, villains don't do this, brother. Okay, villains are gonna take a life. They're gonna do some real diabolical shit to the main cast. Okay, not to like people nobody cares about. No, the main cast is gonna get cooked. And this was one of those moments where I was just like, yeah, no, everybody got out unscathed. Nobody died, none of this. And I say it all the time. You can't expect me to take a story serious when this type of shit happens. Is it fun in the moment? Sure. But when it comes down to, okay, Smack, like, let's criticize it. Where are the weak points at? This is one of the fucking weak points, bro. Because now it's just like, okay, so everybody's just hunting the dark tide. Nobody's bad. Not even the Fraxidus, who were the most interesting cast of the story in terms of the opposition. I can't respect them anymore. Every line of dialogue that Cristoforo has now and in Grand Architect going forward is going to do the same thing to me that Galbrina shooting and Kartathea into the chest did to me. I'm just going to be like, who gives a fuck what they're talking about? Who cares? It's not going to go anywhere. So that was like a big disappointment for me, the way it finished. And y'all, and anybody who watches my content, you shouldn't even be surprised. You know damn well I was going to complain about that. It's a joke. Now, I'm going to stop like doing a tangent on that. The ending really, for me, it broke all the buildup of the villains. It broke all the buildup intensity and nail biting and keeping me on my toes that I have for the builders. That's all I'm getting at. Setting all of that aside, I think I've shared all my thoughts in an overview manner. I think Galbrino once again stole the show from the Rover in a good way. I think she's also somebody who is like a good representation of how to implement in other characters that share the spotlight with Rover. Once again, they don't have to completely obliterate him from the main protagonist role, but they can be not. In fact, here's the best way to put it. They don't even have to like aura still from him. They can just be more of a side character that challenges his perspectives or is more of a mentor to him, or like, you know, they aid him in supporting roles that aren't necessary roles that like make them the savior of the day and stuff. Give more roles to side characters that keep showing up in the story, that add more to the story as an overall world building perspective than just like, I learn about this character, learn their past, and then move on. All right, that's the best way to explain that. To wrap up this entire yap, I still stand by it. Best story they've ever presented. Still a lot more to improve on. But the community being proud of this story is something they should be proud of. It's something that has improved upon everything they've done thus far. And I think they can get better at it with, you know, some of the things that I've provided and highlighted. My rating for the story from a gacha storytelling perspective, 9.5 to a 10, as I've stated. From a regular storytelling perspective, knock it down 2 points. So that would be a 7.5 to an 8. That's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Peace, love, and happiness. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.